Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Liz Live Saturday morning. We have such a cool show today. I can't wait to start talking about all the fun things going on in this world and mental health and connect it all. And it's going to take me a minute. It's a hard thing to do, to connect all the things that I want to today to really get us to think. Good morning, Jeremy. Thanks so much for always being there for me. I really appreciate it. So I have a really cool topic today. We're talking about mental health, your mental health, my mental health, all of our mental health in this country, and freedom. And I've certainly talked about freedom before. Good morning, Sherry. I've certainly talked about freedom as a topic many times before, but there's so many new things popping up in the world that I feel like I need to rediscuss this in a different way. So if you guys can just roll with me today, we're going to start with some current events that I find comical, actually, kind of funny. And then I'm going to get, it's going to end up kind of serious, because we're going to really talk about, how to know what our true self is and how to really experience freedom in our lives and freedom in our culture. Okay, so that's what we're getting into today. So just stay with me, and I promise this is going somewhere. But okay, so I want to start with some news this week, and I'm half laughing because I don't know if any of you heard about the Nicki Minaj story, but it's hilarious, and yet it's very serious, and I love this story. So if you don't know who Nicki Minaj is, honestly, I don't listen to any of her music. I don't know that much about her, but she's a very big pop star. So if you're into pop music, she's a very colorful and I think outspoken, pop star, and she's usually, politically far left. So you have to just kind of keep that in mind as, we talk about this. So Nicki Minaj, she's got 2 million followers on Twitter, and I'm sure all of her social media, she's got a lot of people following her and watching her and all that. So this past week, she made a tweet. She put out a tweet saying that, she's really not sure about the vaccine, whether or not to get the vaccine, and that her cousin's friend took it and his testicles became inflamed. And so she was connecting, she was saying in her tweet that possibly, there could be a connection between getting the vaccine and, your balls getting swollen. And it's not funny, but it kind of is, because it seems like, I don't know, it just seems so preposterous, the whole thing. But who knows, because allergic reactions cause inflammation in the body. And so, who knows, right? So that's not the important part, right? The important part isn't that, this guy's balls, got swollen and she tweeted about it. What the important thing is about this story is that when she did this, Twitter shut her down. Okay? And I think that this is one of the first times that somebody actually on the far left really got to experience what it's like to be shut down and silenced, and therefore have your freedom of speech taken away from you, right? And so I think we could all agree, no matter what political affiliation you have, we can agree that it's generally the left of censor that promotes vaccines, and it's been our very, left and democratic presidential administration that's been pushing vaccines and, really touting it as, the thing to do to prevent COVID, that, and really just doing everything they can to convince everybody to get vaccinated. And again, there are a lot of people on the right of center also who, feel the same way. But the big difference between the two sides politically is that the Republican side, the right, I guess you could say, of center, generally believes in freedom of choice, life, liberty, and freedom, because these are things that make being an American so special. And so there's this, kind of fight always going on in politics and in news media and in the general culture between, should we be, there's this, these mandates coming down from the far left administration, mask mandates and vaccine mandates and then people who don't feel comfortable getting the vaccine, and many people have very good reasons. There's a lot of people who have gotten very, very sick from the vaccines and maybe shouldn't have taken it. And again, I'm not a doctor, but just an opinion. But you have these two warring narratives all the time. And, here this pop star is essentially, harmless in a way, just stating that her cousin's balls, got swollen, and she was linking it to the COVID vaccine, and therefore she was very skeptical and wasn't sure if she's getting it or not yet. And she got shut down off of one of the biggest platforms, social media platforms in the world. Okay, so that's the story. Even though there's a lot of funny different things, interesting little things and tidbits about this, the story is that she was silenced and that she had her freedom of speech taken away. Why? Because she was questioning the dominant story of the left of center political agenda. And she's usually with them. So here she goes, and she gets shut down. So what that kind of makes me wonder and makes me think about, and again, I don't think it matters for this show. I don't think it matters at all if you're on the left or the right of politics, right? And that's not the issue, really. The issue is what is happening to our freedoms. And until it happens to you, until your freedoms are taken away, it's like somebody else's problem. It's somebody else's problem. But the issue is that all of this happening, okay, and the Minaj story is just, one of, hundreds of stories that have gone on in the past year and a half of the like, where anyone who's spoken out against what the current Biden administration is, putting out there, they're getting silenced, shut down. This happened during the presidential election. There were groups of physicians that were coming on to YouTube and saying, actually hydroxychloroquine works, and they were using it, and they were getting shut off YouTube, taken off social media. And so this is starting to become really scary to me. And, when you're a therapist, I hope that all therapists out there, understand the value of freedom, interpersonal freedom, of being who you really are and being able to have a voice in all of your relationships and being able to speak up against injustice in the world and not be, afraid of being, beaten up or silenced or, all the things we fought for, throughout all the past decades, are being, basically, threatened now, just simply because people have different views. And this is really, really scary, guys. And I'm half laughing at this because of the subject matter, which was, Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend's balls. But the fact that just because, somebody who had a lot of followers, which equals power, right? If you have 2 million followers, you have some power. It means 2 million people basically are interested in what you are doing, what you have to say. I mean, I can't even imagine having that many followers. I hope one day I do, but and so she's seen as something powerful by, the people that are in control of this country right now and that want everyone to be good little robots and do what they say. And she basically spoke out, and and she got taken down and silenced off Twitter. So I think this is where we begin the tale of freedoms and why it's so important. So I'm going from the macro and the culture and the freedoms that we're, in. I think we're in a possible danger of losing, and how that then internally affects us on an interpersonal mental health position. And it really is all connected, guys. Okay, so just please stay with me through all this. Okay, so we have this story, this Nicki Minaj story, right? So she gets shut down because she speaks out against the powers that be. She gets taken off Facebook. And then in the same week, I think it was yesterday, the FDA, they, in a vote that I believe was 16-2, their board that decides whether or not certain vaccines, I know at least the Pfizer vaccine is the one I read about, mentioned, should be given as a booster. And this board voted 16-2 no, that we don't, as far as the information that they have right now, and this is according to the Wall Street Journal. Look it up. Go to the CDC. Look it up if you don't believe me. It's right there, coming from the source, which is the CDC and the FDA, not the Wall Street Journal, but I do. I it was a good article. So it was a vote of, I believe, 16 against and 2 for. So that is another message that we're getting kind of in the same week, that, wait a minute, we've been told all along by this new administration, and, it was also championed by, President Trump, that not in a way that it was from Biden, but it's been pushed out there that, hey, if we take this vaccine, that's the answer to COVID-19. That's the answer to the pandemic. And while I do think that it was helpful, I think, from the numbers I've seen, it's maybe 60%, if you read all the data and all the research that is available from the CDC, you will see that basically the efficacy of the vaccine reduces your chances of getting it and your symptoms by about 63%. So, to me, that's enough where, of course, we were being told 97%, but that clearly is now not the case from studies done thus forward this year. So we know that, the COVID vaccine might be 60% effective, but that it cannot compete with natural immunity, which means you've had COVID, and so you have the antibodies. And that was studied in Israel, a study of 700,000 people. And what that study found is that the people who have the antibodies, who actually had COVID and have the natural antibodies, I believe are 27 times less likely to get reinfected with COVID. So, the vaccine efficacy is definitely fading. And so this is now a different story than what we were told even a year ago, right? So as we are all trying to make up our own minds and do our own research and figure out what's best for us, like Nicki Minaj said in her tweet that got shut down and silenced, she didn't get the vaccine yet, and she still wants to do her research, whatever that means, I don't know. But she's basically putting the brakes on, and she's saying, you know what, I'm not so fast. I'm not so convinced that this is the right choice for me, and I'm an American, and I am a free American. At least we're supposed to be truly free. And I want to make up my own mind about whether or not I want to take this vaccine. My body, my choice, right? That can't be conditional. That can't be conditional. So here we are. So we're getting changing stories about efficacy of the vaccine. We have, a very small, tiny percentage of people who have had bad reactions to the vaccine, but there have been a couple. More than a couple. There's been a small number. It's very rare, but there are people who don't, react well. I had no problem with it whatsoever, and I would be open to taking a booster. Now that the FDA came out and said what they said, I don't know, And if you really read into what the FDA is saying, they're saying that they only endorse it for people who are 65 and older or people who have comorbidities. They can get the boost. They would support the booster for that, but that's it, because they're not really sure if there's any more efficacy by giving the booster or not. So I guess what they're saying is if you're 65 and older, better to take a shot at it, no pun intended. Maybe we take a shot at the booster, maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, because it's better than death. But for everybody else, you know what? We're not so sure. We're not so sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. And there was also another study out of Israel showing that young men in their early 20s were having myocarditis, I think some sort of inflammatory reaction in the heart. So I don't know. I wasn't at the board meeting. I don't know everything that happened at the FDA yesterday, but I think that's a really big statement. And it's all plays into, where do our freedoms begin and where do they end? And we're living in a different time than ever before. At least I feel that way. I've never seen in my 45 years of being alive on this planet, I've never seen people being basically shut down, erased from society just because they don't go along with what the man is saying, right? We always had people who were rebellious and stood up for certain things in society, and it was no problem. But now, who knows if this show will even get out there? Who knows if Facebook could very easily take this down just because I'm pointing this out? We don't know. We'll find out. And I will be sure to let you know. So there's all these things happening in society that we as individuals are watching unfold in front of us. And some of us have even had, personal experiences in our own neighborhoods, school districts, workplaces, where we're being faced to, make some pretty tough decisions. If we're being mandated to get the vaccine at our jobs, and we need our income and we need our salary, but we don't want to take the vaccine. Talk about, an interpersonal crisis, and this is happening all the time. I'm getting calls from people saying, oh God, my work just put out this mandate, that, I have to take the vaccine and I don't want to take the vaccine. I'm afraid of it, or, whatever. And it's causing sort of I don't know if I should say an existential crisis, but it's causing an interpersonal crisis for people because they're confused. They're being put up against the wall and they're having to decide, okay, do I want to be hated and ostracized by society? Do I want to possibly lose my job? Do I want to do things that, aren't true to me and then suffer the consequences? Or should I just go along to get along? Which one should I do? What's the best thing for me? And, as a person who works in mental health, and I think probably any therapist who's being honest would admit that we are trained and we are expected ethically and professionally to help people find the best decision for themselves and have the courage and the empowerment, the personal empowerment to say it out loud, to say it to the people that we love, or say it to the government or whomever. And we, in essence, as therapists, I believe we are I don't know if demanded is the right word, but we are, we are obligated ethically to honor people's individual choices and help individuals decide whether or not something is wrong or right for them, and then have the courage and the power to stand up for that. And that is what being free truly means in life. Freedom, to be truly free, is to be who you are and think how you want to think and make your own decisions for yourself without being overly concerned about how other people will think or react to you. And those fundamental obligations that we have as therapists and as American citizens are being threatened every day. And, I hear a lot of people say, well, and I've even said it before, what's the big deal, if you have to put on a mask and, you just put the mask on and go ahead and just, go do your thing. And, why do you have to argue? And, we got so many other vaccines in life, it was fine and we went along with it. And, what's the difference? Well, I think the difference is that the other vaccines in history, as far as I know, were not, basically approved within, a couple of months. They were long time studied, and their efficacies and their side effects were studied. And I think, I don't know exactly, but I think. And this one is very new, and this pandemic is very new, and we've never seen or done any of this before. So we really don't know if there's going to be any long-term effects of the vaccine or not. And anyone who tells you differently is lying, because nobody really has that evidence. Nobody in this world has that evidence. So you have to decide as an individual if it's right for you or not. And I chose to take the vaccine. And I went through a big process. I did a show on it as to how I came to that decision. And it wasn't necessarily an easy decision for me to make. But I made that decision. And I respect and understand people who don't want to get it. And I respect and understand people who do want to get it, because this is a free country, so I thought. So people should be able to make those decisions with their physicians for themselves, and not be forced to do something that they don't want to do to their own bodies. That's my view. And that, to me, was always the American view, and what made America so special. We didn't have a government that forced us to do things like other countries, other third world countries, and other communist countries, and so on and so forth. That was what made America so special. So here we all are. Again, doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you sit upon. Even if you believe in the vaccine 100% and you think that everybody should get it, remember, it's very easy to talk until it happens to you. So for all the people that just think that they have the answers on this, consider what it would be like if you or someone you loved, took the vaccine and something horrible happened to them. Then what would you be saying? So until it happens to you, it's very easy to talk, right? So the rest of us, I think, have to consider that, we don't have a lot of information, but it's available, and it's our choice as to whether or not we want to take it. And if we're being real about it, the chances are that we've probably all been exposed to COVID unvaccinated at some point, and we survived, and others didn't. So again, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not here trying to promote one way or the other. I'm only promoting freedom of choice. And when we start to have our freedoms taken away by the government, and the government or the media, of which we essentially have a relationship with, when we start having our freedoms bit by bit by bit, and you start pulling that chain in, then where does it stop? So if we just sit back and go, well, okay, yeah, that's okay. You can mandate that vaccine, and you can not let us go into restaurants and not serve us because we don't have a vaccination, because you decided in your mind, in your fantasy, that if everyone has a vaccine, that, they can't pass COVID or get COVID, which is false. That's a fantasy. We know that now. We didn't know that, maybe a year ago, but we know that now. So, we're starting, the Americans are getting sick of it, and we're seeing a lot of outbursts of anger and, extreme behaviors, because people are starting to feel choked. They're starting to feel like their freedoms are being taken away from that relationship. And actually, it was a friend of mine yesterday who said, we're actually in a relationship with the government. The government's in our marriages, the government's in, we have to, in our professions, we have to pay them taxes, the government's in everything. So we're in a relation with the government, and we're supposed to trust the government, which, frankly, I don't, and I don't think really anybody at this point does. But this relationship that we were supposed to be able to trust is turning on us, and it's causing a lot of upheaval. It's causing a lot of anxiety and a lot of mental health issues for people in this country. And believe me, I see it every single day. So, people sometimes ask me, well, you're a therapist, why do you talk about current events? And my answer to you is, how can't I? Because all of these current events and all of these things that are happening aren't happening in a vacuum. They're happening to all of us in this country, and everybody's feeling it one way or the other. And so as a therapist, I have to be able and be educated and prepared to talk to people no matter what their political affiliation is or no matter what their point of views are. And I have to be able to sit with them in their anxiety and help them manage that. So how could I not? I mean, I can't live in a black hole. And, well, that doesn't count, because I'm a therapist. Well, actually, therapy and mental health and what's going on in this world today are so connected. And anyone who doesn't want to look at that is literally just, you're lying to yourself. Okay? So now what? Okay, so I've defined the problem, I think. I've explained how what we're seeing in front of us is our freedoms slowly being taken away. Or let's say that's how it feels. We're feeling it. And as a result of that, what happens when you take people's freedoms away? Okay, let's think of it in terms of an animal, for example. So let's say you take a domesticated animal like one of my puppies, one of my dogs, who are used to freedom. They can go anywhere they want in the house. They lay in bed with me. They can run up and down the steps, and they get to go for walks, and they have as much freedom as I can give them, as long, until I can't have them just running out in the street because they're animals and they could get hurt. But, they're free. So imagine if I just started putting my dogs in a cage. First for maybe, an hour or two a day. And then 4 hours a day. And then 6 hours a day. And then 8 hours a day. And so on and so forth. What do you think they're going to do? Well, my doggies are going to either, depending on their personality, they're going to rebel and bark and cry and scream until they get let out, or they're going to get really depressed and just submit, or they're going to get really, really scared and really, really anxious because they don't understand why this is happening. And that is exactly what we're seeing in society. We're seeing outbursts, we're seeing anxiety, we're seeing anger. And I think that we as the people have to start standing up for our own freedoms and for ourselves. And so now the question becomes, how do we do that? Okay, and that's the second half of this conversation. So how do we discover who we really are, our true self, and what we really, really want, and then live by that? And let me tell you, this is not an easy task. It's not an easy task because our whole lives, everybody on the outside has been telling us how we should be. Our parents, our teachers, the culture, our peers, our, physicians growing up, the government to some degree, right? Not like today, but, you have to pay your taxes and da-da-da. And so as we come into this world, we're being sent constant messages from all the different aspects of society that tell us, okay, this is how you need to be in order to be loved, to be good, to be accepted. We have to follow these things, these cultural mores, these social mores, in order to be good, accepted, right? And most of us, if we have any, I guess, respect for ourselves, will challenge those things as we grow, right? And that's healthy, right? We say, well, Mom, why do I have to be home at midnight? And your parents tell, well, because everything bad happens after midnight and you're this age and you don't need to be out. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be safe. But we're going to question those things. Why do I have to wear my hair like this? Why do I have to look like this to attract, a partner, or, all the things that we go through. And we continue to go through those things all of our lives, right? It never ends. We're constantly debating all of these messages. And who we truly are becomes very blurry, very, very blurry. And I read some really fantastic articles in Psychology Today, and it just so happened that the title of the issue is Your True Self, What It Is and How to Embrace It. And, to my surprise, I don't usually love the articles in this magazine, but it was excellent. And it's a big spread in the middle. And the true self is the person you want others to believe you are, okay? And there's a whole article. And I highlighted a couple things. And what others expect of you is a reflection of who they are, their own wants and needs, okay? So if we take that into the culture today, what others expect of you is a reflection of who they are, their own wants and needs, okay? If you take that into today's culture and you apply it to vaccines and masks and okay? Whatever it is that people believe in, they're trying to push that on all of us. And then there becomes this shame of, well, I don't really believe masks work. And, I've done a lot of, I'm not saying people may believe. I don't think, actually, I'm not a big mask believer. But anyway, it's not about me. I've read all the research and it doesn't sound like they work for me, so I don't want to wear a mask. If you say that in today's culture, people, they're going to cancel you. They're going to, fire you. They're going to shame you. So a lot of us might be walking around with that mask on, or believing in the mask, or saying we believe in it just to get along, to go along, to get along, when our true self might be saying something else. Our true self might be saying, well, I don't know if this really makes sense, but, that's what everybody's saying, so, I'm just going to go with it. So there's the conflict that we all go through in our search for freedom, interpersonal freedom, is, okay, what is it that I really want? What is it that I really believe? What is it that, who am I really? Am I just a living expectation of what other people want? Or am I actually living my truth, my true self? And that's something that's very hard to discern when you live in a culture like we do, especially right now. So some other things that I outlined, this one's really important. Without all of the roles and identities I've acquired in the course of living, who am I? What do I want for myself? You don't need anyone's permission to do what feels right to you, to do what feeds and nourishes you. Don't let others' expectations limit who you are. What others expect of you is a reflection of who they are, their own wants and needs. It's the way they want you to be so you can be a part of their life. That is profound, because if you take somebody who, you know, is like super sensitive to COVID and is afraid to go anywhere and masks and all that stuff to the height of the degree, isolates themselves from other people, they have decided that if you don't do the same thing as they do, that maybe you can't be in their life, because they have identified so deeply with these certain cultural tenets. So we've gone along with that to a degree. I mean, I haven't, but you know, I've had to pay for being outspoken. I mean, I don't really care, but I've had to pay for being outspoken. You know, I've for about what I believe in, which is really pathetic. You know, it's what we should be encouraging for good mental health. We should be encouraging healthy minds think for themselves. Healthy minds can discern outside messages from true self. That's what healthy minds do. Healthy minds ask questions. Healthy minds just don't go, oh, the government said so. You know, the TV news said so, so that's what I'm going to do. That's a very unhealthy mind. And I bet those people live in a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, because deep down inside they know. They know that they're not necessarily living their true self. They don't even know who their true self is. They might not even know what that means. So, are you living free in accordance to your true self, or are you living up for everyone else's expectations of you? And this goes way further and deeper than COVID. Okay, this can go for you know, whatever image you want to project. And we're all guilty of it to some degree, right? So, for example, if you come from a very wealthy family and everyone in your family is incredibly wealthy and you're not, in order for you to feel acceptable, you may have to, you know, try to live up to that socioeconomic standard and maybe put on a show for everyone on the outside, but maybe on the inside you don't really care. And the only reason you do care is because you think your family won't accept you unless you have the wealth that they have. But your true self may be completely different, but because you don't want to be rejected by your parents or your family, you pretend like, yeah, that's what I think too. I see that a lot with men especially. I'm going to use Facebook and social media to show everybody that I have all of these things so that I'll be loved and accepted. But it's not the true self. It's the social self. It's the self that society or your little cultural group wants you to, you know, be like or act like. And this cannot be supported by mental health professionals. It would never be supported by mental health professionals in any other way. So why are we supporting it, if any of us are supporting it, with COVID? Why are we not supporting, and maybe we are, I don't know, I shouldn't speak because I don't know what all therapists are doing or what our groups are doing, because I really don't pay that much attention to it. But if anyone in this world should be encouraging people and understanding that people want to think freely and think for themselves, it should be us. It should be mental health counselors, marriage and family therapists, and psychologists, We are the ones sitting with clients. We are the ones who are helping and guiding them through good decision making. And our professional and ethical obligations are to free people. Free. If you're not free up here, you're not free anywhere. So I with all of this conversation, as we're going from the sort of the micro of culture to the micro of the self, or the macro of culture to the micro of self, kind of did a little bit of both. We know, everyone knows who's listening to this, that we can never live peacefully until we're free. I would argue that freedom is, it's as special to us and innate to the human being as eating, drinking, crying, speaking, communication. And it's behind all that. And some would argue that, you know, we have the human self and the spirit. The spirit is free, trying to break through the brain and all of our neurological systems, and, you know, that it's the humanness that makes us a prisoner. But I would argue, you know, that may be true. I don't know, that might be true. But I would argue that we ourselves are the ones who stifle our own freedom. And we have to be able to say things that we believe in, that are our truth, so that we can be free and not held prisoner by what other people might think of us. Because that's no way to live. If you live like that, you're never really free. You're never free. And when you're sitting there and you're watching society bit by bit by bit take away your, you know, constitutional freedoms, it really causes a lot of anxiety and sadness and confusion in all of us. Who do we trust? Where do we go where we can be free? And I think that's why people are gravitating so drastically to these political identities, because at least maybe if you say, well, I'm, you know, a Republican, and you declare that identity, then you know when you're in the company of other Republicans, you can be free. You can be yourself. You can speak freely because there won't be consequences, because you're preaching to the choir, essentially. And same thing with Democrat, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I really don't like to identify as either. What I'm okay identifying is a libertarian, because libertarians are for freedom. That's what we believe in. At all costs, freedom. Freedom, freedom, freedom. And that will cross the lines of a lot of the platforms of both political parties, because both parties, in some ways, want to take away a little bit of a piece of your freedom. And freedom comes with responsibilities. So you can't always have it both ways, right? So I see the screen is moving, so let's see what's going on the screen. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Good morning, Jeremy, Sherry, what's up? Hi, Joey. Hello, Tim and Thomas. Blessings to you. And Peter Stein. Peter was very instrumental in helping me with today's show, and actually it was his idea. So let's see what Peter says. He suggests an experiment. Try doing something for one day that you currently don't feel free about. Interested in the feedback you get after experiment in a later show. I like it. So, yeah, so that could really, any ideas about, like, for an example? So, like, maybe what Peter could be suggesting is, let's say you hate wearing masks. And oh my gosh, don't everybody go crazy. Okay. I hate wearing masks. And when I have to do it, I do it, whatever. But I don't like the way they feel. I really don't believe in their efficacy very much, only under certain circumstances. And, I have respiratory issues. I hate wearing a mask. So instead of just wearing it all the time, which I really don't anymore, but, maybe just wearing it, not wearing it. See how you feel, And again, I'm not encouraging people to be irresponsible. I'm not encouraging people to, run amok and say, F COVID, because I do respect COVID in a way that, it really has, been a horrible thing. And many people have died, I think, as a result. Don't suggest cheating on your husband or wife. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely not going to do that, but I am a couples therapist, so, if that's what happens, you can come to me for help afterwards. But seriously, yeah, no, I'm not recommending that. But let me think. What is it that, I don't know. I would say maybe think about some relationships in your life, okay? Maybe it's a parent or a spouse, because those are usually the relationships where we don't necessarily act as our true self. We will definitely, in those circumstances, oftentimes just to please our parents or please our spouse or avoid an argument, we will just, go along to get along. Peace at any cost, we call it in therapy. And so maybe think about something that, you've always just nodded your head and, kind of went along with it. Really, you just don't agree with. There was a quiz here in this article. The true self, what is defining the true self, okay? We are aware of the gap between our interior and our constructed exterior. So are we fraudulent, right? So meaning we know if we really stop and listen, we really know what we stand for and what our truth is and what we believe in and don't believe in. But yet what we project out there oftentimes can be something completely different. So say the true self says what it feels. Okay, and listen to this little quiz here. And you guys can all get this on psychologytoday.com. I think it's available there. At times I say what people want to hear rather than what I want. I do what works best for the situation, even if it's not how I feel. Others might see me as fake. It would take a lot for me to tell someone they have hurt me. I tell the truth even if it makes others unhappy. I say what I believe even if people don't like it. Sometimes I act like I believe what others believe. I tend to tell others exactly what I think even if it causes conflict. I avoid sharing desires that others may not approve of. I express my needs and desires directly. I share my feelings with others even if it upsets them. I tell people what I want, even if they may not want the same thing. Now, this is coming from, Psychology Today is pretty much, it's a big deal if you're a therapist. We all have profiles on it. We submit articles. It's great information, and it's not a medical journal, so it's more poppy. It's easier to read. If you subscribe to psychological journals and therapy journals, which I do, those can be very dry and boring. So Psychology Today is something that all of us can sort of get into. And easy reads, and that was a realness scale that I just read. So if you go to that scale and you add COVID, politics, masking, and you really think about it, what is your truth? You really believe in everything that the government says? When do you really believe everything you read? When, you know, the organizational information itself from the CDC and, you know, I don't know, well, I guess I shouldn't say the World Health Organization, but from the FDA contradicts what the government is telling you? Doesn't that, I mean, so what do you really believe? And so let's do it just for the sake of it in a realness scale. At times I say what people want to hear about COVID rather than what I want. I do what works best for the situation, I do what works best for the political situation, even if it's not how I feel. Others might see me as fake politically. It would take a lot for me to tell someone they have hurt me. I will tell the truth about how I feel about COVID, even if it makes others unhappy. So I encourage people to go to psychology.com and type in the realness scale and be real. Be real with yourself, you know, because if we don't encourage this, being real, if we don't encourage honesty, then you are discouraging freedom. And freedom, whether it's interpersonal or cultural or countrywide, it is the most important, one of the most important virtues that exists. Because like I said in the beginning, when you start taking people's freedoms away, then you start to really get what it feels like. So when you're just, you know, bopping along in your life and you're not confronted with any of your freedoms being taken away, it's very easy to, you know, mock somebody who thinks differently than you. Right? It's very easy to, you know, separate yourself. Well, I'm on this side of the political spectrum, or I'm on that part, and how dare they think this way, or how dare, you know, when you start going down that road, that's a really slippery slope. Really slippery slope. And so to discourage freedom is to discourage humanity. I really believe that. I really believe that. Now, of course, there are boundaries with freedom, right? Because, you know, once you start really hurting somebody, I mean really hurting someone, not hurting their feelings, but really causing life-threatening harm to them. Okay, now there's rules and laws and regulations there. That's why we have laws to keep the peace, to keep order, right? To prevent harm to others. But if you live without freedom, whether it's what you want to say to somebody interpersonally about a relationship, about your relationship with them, or whether it's about, you know, something culturally, we all have to be responsible to give those freedoms to each other, especially if the government is taking them away piece by piece by piece. And guys, this is really happening. You know, I saw an article on Facebook that said vaccines, you know, way beat out natural immunity for protection from COVID. And I thought, that's not true. Israel just released this huge study of 700,000 people that says quite the opposite. And not just a little opposite, 27 times the opposite. So there's, you know, our culture is full of lies and brainwashing information that ultimately is taking away your freedom. Don't believe everything you hear. Think for yourself. Research for yourself. It's not that hard. I do it all the time. You can go to the CDC and you can get pretty much the real story, and it's not going to look anything like what you hear on the news. Okay? But don't believe me. Go see for yourself. It's really not that hard. If you spend an hour looking at the CDC statistics, like, it's obvious. Okay? You don't need to be a statistician or a brain surgeon. And don't disempower your fellow American because they feel differently than you. And that goes on both sides of the fence. So if you have a crazy liberal friend who, well, fine, let them, give them the freedom to think and feel and believe in whatever, okay? And if you have an extreme, someone way, way down the whole rabbit hole, right? And, they're convinced of all these different things, you know what? They have the right and the freedom to think that way. And it's not for you or anyone else to tell them that they're bad people or they're wrong for thinking that. Maybe a better question would be, that's interesting. How did you come to that conclusion? Please share that with me. That encourages thought and that encourages freedom. And how we live our lives, our true self versus that sort of fake self or the self that we present so that we're giving people the image that we think they want. That's an interesting journey to go on to try to separate those two things apart. Because so much of who we feel like we need to be is being asked or demanded by what we assume other people want from us. And so that's not the real authentic us. And you have to take a lot of time to get really introspective, to really get in touch with your true self. And you have to be prepared to maybe have some change up in some friends, because maybe not all of your friends want you to be living, differently than them. Maybe they won't like you. I've experienced that. I experienced that with people in my own family because I had different political views than them. I was shocked. I was shocked that could happen, and sad. But those are people who don't value interpersonal freedoms, and they're the danger to this country because they're the ones who are going to just say, here, take it. I obey, right? Like a robot. And that is never something that I would ever, 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 ever encourage. So freedom, not only is it a most important tenet of this country and should remain so. Our forefathers wrote it all over the place in the Constitution. We fought many wars for it. Let's not forget that freedom is the essence of being American. It's what makes us so special and different than everywhere else in the world. Capitalism, free markets, right? Less government control, more freedom. And again, you don't agree with me on that one, no problem. I still love and respect you. I'm not going to be the one to tell you how to think, but we should be giving the gifts of freedoms to our fellow man by allowing them to be true to themselves and who they are without judgment. And I hope that we do that for ourselves. And finding your true self could be a whole nother show, but I would just leave today with saying, if you really want to get in touch with your true self, check out the realness scale on psychologytoday.com. It's a little scale, but very powerful. And, go and have a therapy session with me or somebody and see if you can, through a line of questioning, really get to the essence of, what you truly believe and who you truly are. And I think we find our true self when we feel completely free. When we feel completely free, even within, the certain confines of just being in a society. Are we really free? Free to be. And, so on that note, I hope that you will like and share today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it. I have. I appreciate everybody watching and being with me today. It's exciting. The audiences are starting to grow back after I took a dip over to YouTube for a minute. But I thank you all for watching. Please remember to like and share my Facebook videos. Encourage people to follow me on Facebook, Actuation Counseling, Making Change Happen on Facebook. Eliz Therapist on Instagram, and on youtube.com, the Elizabeth126. And you'll have access to all my videos and everything that I do. And I really appreciate all of your support. I hope you all have a beautiful weekend. I woke up this morning and it was 79 for us Floridians. That is like a big change. It's been like 90 every day for the past 3 months, so it feels really good. So enjoy the beautiful day, everybody. Thank you for watching Liz Live, and I will see you back here on Wednesday at 8 p.m. See you then.